Hello students, in this video lecture we will be talking about a very important topic, and that is the female reproductive system of which is a part of the human reproduction of 12th biology syllabus. And in this portion we will be first talking about the location of the female reproductive system, that where it is found in the human female body, and after that we will be discussing its key features, that what are the components that are actually included in the female reproductive system. So as you can see on your screen, the overview of the female body having the presence of the reproductive system. So you can see over here that this portion is basically considered to be as the female reproductive system. Now, this female reproductive system is usually localized in the female body in the pelvic region. So if we consider the location, so the location of the female reproductive system is basically the pelvic region. So in pelvic region, and that too, pelvic region means the region that lies in the lower abdominal area. All right, and that too inside the abdominal cavity. So inside the abdominal cavity. All right, so this is the location of the female reproductive system in the body that we have seen. All right, in the pelvic region inside the abdominal cavity. Now, these are basically the pair of the mammary glands that we see. So these are pair of mammary glands which is also included in the female reproductive system. Mammary glands. However, these glands have been included in the accessory glands. Accessory glands in female. All right, so we will be discussing about all these components in the lecture itself. All right, so let's move on to the main component part. So on your screen you can see the 3D model of the female reproductive system. So we will first label all the components of this 3D model of the female reproductive system, and then we will be talking and discussing about the components. All right, so let's label it first. Now, so starting from the upper portion, so this upper bulged portion, which you can see, is considered to be as the fundic region. So this is the fundic region. All right. Now, this portion up till here is considered to be as the oviduct, also called as fallopian tube. So this has basically three components. All right. So which we'll be discussing later in the video. Now this is the ovary. All right, so you can see ovary is usually present in pairs. All right, so ovary is 2 in number, and also the fallopian tube is also paired, so these are 2 in number. This is called ovarian ligament, which is actually responsible for attaching the ovaries with that of the uterine wall. All right, this very component is called as the uterus. All right, now this portion, that means this narrow tube-like structure, is called cervix. This region is considered to be as the vagina, and this opening of vagina is called the vulva. So vulva is basically considered to be as opening of vagina. All right, so ovary is usually present in pairs, and this fallopian tube is also present in pairs, which we can see. Alright, so these are the labelings of the female reproductive system. Now we will talk about the first very important component, and that is called as ovary. Now, so let's just shift to model a little bit, and we'll just drag this component here. Alright, so this is representing the ovary. So we will write down the features of ovary. Alright, so ovaries, I already told you that these are basically located in the pelvic region inside the abdominal cavity. Now, if we consider the features of the ovaries, then ovaries are considered to be as the primary female sex organs. So these are primary female sex organs. Alright, now these sex organs, since these are sex organs, so they will be producing the female gamete. So they produces female gamete, and that female gamete is called ovum. So apart from producing the female gamete, which is ovum, now these ovaries are also responsible for producing some steroid hormones, which are called ovarian hormones. So they also produce steroid or ovarian hormones. Alright, now what about the length? If you see the length, so it is usually 2 to 4 centimeter in length. So the length is 2 to 4 centimeter. Now each ovary is actually covered up by a very thin epithelium that is called as ovarian stroma. You can see that this ovary here, like this. Now this ovary around here is actually covered up by a thin epithelium that surrounds it. Alright, so each ovary is covered by thin epithelium that encloses the ovarian stroma. So each ovary is covered by thin epithelium enclosing ovarian stroma. Alright, and if you see the internal section, see, like here. So if we will consider this internal section of this part, this section, alright, so the internal section, which is called as the ovarian stroma, this is actually the matrix of the ovarian stroma. And this ovarian stroma is divided into two zones. The outer zone is called cortex, which is the peripheral zone, and the inner one is called medulla. So this ovarian stroma is actually divided into two zones. One is called cortex and the other is called medulla. So cortex is the outer part and medulla is the inner region that will contain the blood vessels and all. Alright, so if we just label it, so this will go like this. Just a second. We'll just put all the things together. Or if I'll just drag this one and maximize this a little bit. Just a second. Let me just slice out all these components. and just maximize all this figure. So this you can see that this portion, these blood vessels which are present over here, so this portion is actually the medulla region. These are blood vessels. All right, this is ovary. And this region which you can see over here is representing the cortex part, which is the outer region. So this is the thing. Now, so we'll just, drag out the part, or I'll rather say I will just isolate the part of this one. Let me just isolate this part so that it will be a little bit more clear with the fallopian tube section. Now, so as you can see in the model, that this entire portion, fallopian tube, fallopian tube or oviduct is a portion which consists of 3 different components. All right. So oviduct, if we consider oviduct, then each oviduct is usually 10 to 12 centimeter long. So it is 10 to 12 centimeter long, and it will extend from ovary, extends from ovary to uterus. So we have already seen that, there was the presence of ovary, and ovary was ultimately leading to the extension towards the oviduct, and then the main component was uterus over here. All right, so this is the case. Now, oviduct has 3 components. That means fallopian tube is divided into 3 parts. So, fallopian tube divided into 3 parts. All right, so the first one is called infundibulum. All right, so we'll describe each one of the component one by one. So in case of infundibulum, you can see, so this portion is considered to be as infundibulum. This is infundibulum. So infundibulum is usually funnel shape. You can see the funnel shaped structure of infundibulum. All right, so this is usually funnel shaped, and is the part which is closest to the ovary. If I just put all the figures together like this, all right, so rather it will be more clear. So you can see that this is funnel shaped, and it's the part which is closest to ovary. It is a part which is closest to ovary. You can see the finger-like projection. We can just remove this part like this. So you can see the finger-like projection which is present over here. Let me just do it with a different color. So these are basically finger-like projections which are called fimbriae. All right, so these fimbriae are basically responsible, these are finger-like projection present at the edges of the infundibulum and responsible for collecting the ovum after ovulation. All right, so finger-like projections called fimbriae is found. Fimbriae present, and this fimbriae is ultimately responsible for collecting the ovum which is released after ovulation. So that collects ovum after ovulation. All right, so this is the case. So this is of the infundibulum part. So this is the first component. Now the second component is basically this part or this portion you can see is the ampulla region. All right. So the second component of oviduct is ampulla. Now this ampulla is the region which is a wider part of the oviduct. You can see a little bit wider than that of the infundibulum. So it's a wider part of oviduct, and this is a part which is the actual site of fertilization. All right. So it's a actual site of fertilization. So actual site for fertilization. All right. So this is the second component. And what about the third component? So the third component is basically over here. All right. And this is called isthmus. This is the third region which is called isthmus. And this we have already seen that this is infundibulum. Infundibulum. All right. We can just, keep all the models together like this so that it will be easier for you all to understand. So the next component is isthmus. Now, isthmus is a narrow lumen which is ultimately going to join the uterus part. So narrow lumen that joins uterus. All right. So sometimes it is also, seen that the fertilization is taking place in the ampullary isthmic junction, but mostly it has been seen that the fertilization, actual site of fertilization is the ampulla region of the fallopian tube. All right. Now, after the fallopian tube, we will be discussing about the uterus and further components of the female reproductive system. So let's just talk about uterus first. Now, so we have already seen that this component, this central component is representing the uterus part. All right. So uterus is a very important component because it is the site for implantation. All right. So let me just give you some of the important features first, and then we will discuss its wall layers. Let me shift the model a little bit, and we will discuss about the uterus features. So uterus is one such important, component or important part of the female reproductive system that is the actual site for implantation. That means after fertilization, the further development of the zygotes, all right, into blastocyst will occur into the uterus only. All right. So the implantation is basically a process where the blastocyst will be stuck in the uterus in the inner lining of the uterine wall. So all these details and everything had been provided in the content part of the description section in the video link. So the very first important point is that it is the site for implantation. All right. So site for implantation, and this uterus is also called womb. So this has been given in another name also called womb. All right. And if you see its shape, then you people can see that the shape is usually pear shape, inverted pear shape. All right. So this is usually inverted pear shaped like this. So shape is inverted pear. All right. Now this uterus is actually the part where the embryo develops into fetus. So what I was talking about the implantation, that is that only. So it is the part where embryo develops into fetus. That means full developed baby. All right. And this uterus ultimately is going to open into cervix, and cervix is ultimately going to open into vagina. All right. So uterus opens into it, it leads into a narrow opening. So it opens into cervix and then to vagina and then to vagina. All right. Now this uterus is basically attached to the pelvic wall. Since I already told you that this is a component, this female reproductive system is present in the pelvic region. That means the lower abdominal region in the female body. So this uterus is attached to the pelvic wall by some ligamentous tissues. So you can note in another point that attached to pelvic wall by ligaments. All right. So this was about the features for uterus. Now we will see the wall of the uterus. All right. That there are 3 different wall of uterus having 3 layers of tissues arrangement in them. All right. So we will just move this figure over here. Yeah, here better. So uterus has 3 wall layers. All right. So let me just write down the wall layer first, and then we will talk about the, we will label it in the model. So wall of uterus. All right. So the wall of uterus is usually 3 layers. So the first one is called perimetrium. All right. The second one is called myometrium. And the third one is called endometrium. All right. So perimetrium, myometrium, and endometrium. We will now see the location first in the model, and then we will write down the functions of each of the component. So see, we will just color it using different colors. So this one, this layer. So this is the outer layer. Then we will use it in another color. That is this one. So it is going to be like this. And finally, another color which is slight different, and that is going to be like this. Or we will rather use a little bit more different color like this. So it is going to be like this. Yeah. Okay. So there are 3 different wall layers being represented by 3 different colors. All right. So this layer, outermost wall layer, is the perimetrium, which you can see. All right. And this perimetrium is usually thin membranous layer. It's a thin membranous external. Since it is present outermost, so thin membranous external layer. All right. So this is perimetrium. Now, what about the second layer, which is myometrium? So this you can see is the second layer, which is myometrium. This is myometrium. All right. And myometrium is a thick middle layer, which is usually made of smooth muscles. So this is a thick middle layer. Thick middle layer made of smooth muscles. Smooth muscles. Now, one of the most important features of myometrium is that the myometrium is basically responsible for exhibiting strong contractions during the delivery of the baby. All right. So this is the layer in which the uterine contraction begins during the parturition process or during the delivery of the baby process. So this is the function. So the function of this layer is to exhibit strong contractions during delivery of baby. To exhibit strong contraction during delivery of the baby. All right, so during the parturition process. So this is about the second important layer. Now what about the third layer, which is endometrium? Now this layer which you can see over here, this layer which I have marked in blue lining or blue color, so this is the third layer, which is endometrium. Now this layer is also very important. All right, and this is a glandular layer. All right, so this is inner glandular layer. So this is an inner glandular layer which lines the uterine cavity, and the function of this layer is to undergo the cyclical changes during menstrual cycle. This is a layer which ultimately, this endometrium is only the layer which degenerates during the menstrual cycle. All right, so this layer, it undergoes cyclical changes during menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle. The details of all these content have been provided in the description section. All right, so this is about the uterus and the wall of the uterus that we have discussed. Now after uterus comes the cervix part. So we will now discuss the cervix part now. Now this component, this one, is basically the cervix. All right, now it's a narrow canal that connects the uterus to the vagina. So this connects uterus to vagina. All right, so we have already seen that this part is the uterus part and this part is the vagina portion. All right, so this is going to connect the uterus to the vagina, and the opening of this vagina we have already labeled in the model itself. This is opening of vagina, and this opening of vagina is called vulva, or it is also called as vaginal orifice. So it's vaginal orifice. All right, so this is the case. Now there are two other important technical terms as well that we will be talking about. All right, and one is called as cervical canal and the other is being called as birth canal. So the first is called cervical canal. Now what is cervical canal? So the cervix part, the cavity of the cervix which you are seeing over here, this is the cervical canal. All right, so this is cervical canal. Cavity of the cervix is called cervical canal. All right, so it is the cavity of cervix. Now what about birth canal? If we have to label it, birth canal. Now birth canal is a combination of cervical canal along with vagina. That means this cervical canal along with this vagina is going to form, these two are going to form the birth canal. This one. So cervical canal along with the vagina. Cervical canal along with vagina is going to form the birth canal. So we have discussed about the female reproductive system in detail. All right, we have seen its the components of each of the female reproductive system in detail, about the functions, where they are located, what is the function of each of the component and everything. All right, thank you.